was the single largest document release regarding Epstein. It happened over 4 days. And to me, this wasn't a huge deal. What I like about it is the fact that it brought attention back to the Epstein situation. Now, some people are arguing one way or the other, whether that's a good thing, whether it's a distraction from other things that are going on, whether it's an attempt to heighten the tensions of 2024 already leading up to the election cycle. I don't know. I think that it's probably just a situation where there was a legal court judge that decided they were going to release these documents, and then it just reignited the whole Epstein situation. I think that's probably the most likely situations here. I don't think it's a huge distraction. I don't think that these people want to throw everybody under the bus. But what I do know is that almost everybody who was on this list was already named. We already knew these names. We already knew about Prince Andrew. We already knew about Bill Clinton. We already knew about Kevin Spacey. We already knew even Stephen Hawking. We already knew these names. Right, this isn't very much of this was already out there. Now, there were some details and some snippets that have gone viral that have had more of an emphasis on them as a result of these documents, but I don't think that it was anything earth-shattering. So the first thing I want to do for you here, I want to list the, let's see, let me pull it up for you here. I want to list the 90 names. I want to list the 90 names that were on the Epstein list in as quick as fashion as possible for you. So the 90 names in 90 seconds that were on Epstein's list for you. And I'll speak fast, so try and keep up. But I just want to throw all these names out for you because everybody's like, where's the list? Where's the list? Where's the list? I don't see a list. I just see documents. Well, here you go. Here is the 90 names that were listed in 90 seconds. You can time me. I'm not exactly sure. Let's see. All right, we're at 2 minutes and 16 seconds, 2 minutes and 20 seconds will begin. Ghislaine Maxwell, Virginia Lee Roberts Garuff, Kathy Alexander. Okay, wait. Let's go back. Seeing that Virginia Garuff's name is on this list, I do want you to know that this list is not just the perpetrators. This list was, and this came out, there was like 170 names. It's like, no, this list is not just the names of the people that were the perpetrators. This list, Virginia Garuff is the one whose legal case is the reason that this came out. And that's probably why she's number 2 on here behind Ghislaine Maxwell, because it was Virginia Garuff's legal case against Ghislaine Maxwell. So now that I've preempted that here, I will point out to you within this list some of the names that maybe were a little bit newer, but were always a part of this conversation we've been having for a while. So here we go. Ghislaine Maxwell, Virginia Garuff, Kathy Alexander, Miles Alexander, James Michael Ostrich, Philip Barton, Redacted, number 7, Kate Blanchett, David Boyce, Laura Booth, Evelyn Boulette, Rebecca Boylan, Josh Brunner, Naomi Campbell, Carolyn Casey, Paul Kessel, Sharon Churcher, Bill Clinton, David Copperfield, Alexandra Cousteau, Cameron Diaz, Leonardo DiCaprio, Alan Dershowitz, Mr. Mona Devison, Redacted, Bradley Edwards, Amanda Allison, Kimberly Espinoza, Jeffrey Epstein, Ann Farmer, Marie Farmer, Alexander Fakai, Crystal Figueroa, Anthony Figueroa, Luis Farah, Eric Ganny, Meg Garvin, Sheridan Gibson Butt, Robert Garuff, Al Gore, Ross Bow, Fred Graff, Philip Grudiran, Redacted, Shannon Harrison, Stephen Hawking, Victoria Hazel, Brittany Henderson, Brett Jaff, Michael Jackson, Carol Roberts Kess, Dr. Karen Kudikoff, Peter Listerman, George Lucas, Tony Lyons, Bob Meister, Jamie Mellinson, Lynn Miller, Marvin Minsky, Redacted, David Mullen, Joe Pagano, Mary Paluga, J. Stanley Pottinger, Joseph Ricari, Michael Ryder, Jason Richards, Bill Richardson, Sky Roberts, Scott Rothstein, Forrest Sawyer, Doug Schodel, Kevin Spacey, Cecilia Stein, Mark Tafoya, Brent Tyndall, Kevin Thompson, Donald Trump, Ed Tuttle, Emma Vagan, Kimberly Vaughn Edwards, Crescenda Valdez, Anthony Velardes, Martinez Velasquez, Vicky Ward, Jared Weinfeld, Courtney Weil, Bruce Willis, Daniel Wilson, Andrew Albert, Christians Edwards, Duke of York. There you go. There's your 90 names. Now, again, this is not the client list, right? This is a list of individuals that were a part of the documents in general, okay? So some of those people could have been victims. Some of those people could have been listed for other reasons. But we know some of those names. Not even all of those names are the ones that are have been brought up in the past. There's some really wild ones that have been brought up too. However, I would like to note that there were some ones that stuck out to me. David Copperfield was one that I don't remember exactly discussing surrounding this. And he's been a big conversation starter around this. Another one is Al Gore. I don't remember Al Gore being another part of this before the conversation. And then another one is who has actually spoken out now is Cameron Diaz has come out to speak out against her name being on the list. Cameron Diaz came out and said that she has never had any association whatsoever with Jeffrey Epstein. Well, my question would be, where did her name come up on these documents? Which I guess we could probably look a little bit further to see the actual legal documentation that has been brought up. But we could dive into that in just a second here. So there are the 90 names of the individuals. Now let's see if there's anybody who commented on this. Let's go ahead and see. Somebody said these names were taken from transcripts of evidence given during Maxwell's trial. Being named means nothing without context, and even with context, the only thing it might spark is a police investigation into a name which is associated with a given incident or set of behaviors. All right. I just saw the greatest thing about Stephen Hawking, and I'm going to hold on to that because we're going to talk about Stephen Hawking in depth in just a minute. So I'm going to hold on to that one. So let's segue into this. Okay, now, another thing that's happened more recently is, I believe his name is Andrew Epstein, has come out and did an interview with Tucker Carlson. Let me see if I can pull that up. Andrew Epstein, being the brother of Jeffrey Epstein, said that he no longer believes that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. And so let's see if we can pull this up. Andrew Epstein, Tucker Carlson. All right. And so the reason that this is substantial is because Andrew Epstein is the only family that Jeffrey Epstein has. He's the only person that they should have been contacting as a result of this. Now, maybe I got Mark Epstein. There we go. Mark Epstein is the name. Not Andrew. Maybe I was thinking Prince Andrew for other reasons involved with Jeffrey Epstein, but I digress. So let's go to the tuckercarlson.com, to the Tucker Carlson network, and read this. It says, he did a whole episode with him where he had a discussion with his brother, which I'm sure would be very interesting. So if you want to watch that, head over to tuckercarlson.com. But it's 26 minutes, and I'm not going to drag you through all of that. So that was the situation, is that Mark Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein's brother, did an interview with Tucker Carlson and said that he no longer believes that his brother, Jeffrey, was the person was attempted suicide or committed suicide. He believes that there's something more nefarious about the situation, like everybody else in the world, to be fair. There's a fair amount of people who, too, believe, I believe it was even Megyn Kelly came out just the last few days and said that we would be hearing from Jeffrey. What she said is that we're going to be hearing a lot more about Jeffrey Epstein, Megyn Kelly said. We're going to be hearing not only a lot more about him or his case or the situation, but we're actually going to be hearing from Jeffrey Epstein himself this year, said Megyn Kelly. Now, I'm not sure what that means. To me, that means that he's alive and well and is willing to speak out, or at least maybe there's some files or videos that he has that were maybe some sort of, lost videotapes of him speaking about this honeypot situation. And I think that's a deeper conversation that we should get into now. Is it seems to be somewhat of a misconception for people who haven't been following this for as long as I have been in depth. I followed day by day, word by word, the Ghislaine Maxwell trials, even prior to that with Jeffrey Epstein. Went into the Black Book. I have it on my Substack, austinadams.substack.com. You can go in there, go back through the files, and find the Black Book for Jeffrey Epstein, where it has the names and phone numbers of all of his associates, every known contact that he had in this book, with their phone numbers. Okay. But anyways, there's a lot of people who are being privy to this situation now who maybe weren't before, who don't understand the background. And there's a lot of people who were following this whole time who maybe just thought, oh, it's just a bunch of elite pedophiles who are sick individuals and they just have a proclivity to underage individuals, and they're just disgusting pedophiles. And yes, you would be correct. But also, the reason that it goes much deeper than that. Jeffrey Epstein, and I'll give you the synopsis fairly quickly. Jeffrey Epstein was with Ghislaine Maxwell. Okay? Now, Jeffrey Epstein, the financier, but very little people know where he got his money from or his funding to be a financier. Right. And so the speculation is that in the correlation, the connections here is that Jeffrey Epstein with Ghislaine Maxwell's dad was an agent of the Mossad. And the Mossad is the CIA of Israel, essentially. And they're well known as the single most powerful and capable intelligence agency in the world, even more than the CIA, which should concern you in and of itself. But the ties between Ghislaine Maxwell and the Mossad cannot be ignored. Her father was an agent of the Mossad, which leads me to believe that there's some connection here. Although in background piece for her father is that her father actually got pushed off of a yacht and murdered. It was called an accident, I guess, so I can't say was murdered, but the official thing is that it was an accident. But he fell off of a yacht and died. And that was the way that he died, which is a super mysterious, weird way to die, especially for such a high-profile, high-net-worth individual, especially one associated with a foreign entity's intelligence community, but I digress. So the situation is that the ties between Jeffrey Epstein and the Mossad cannot be ignored. So you take that to its extent, and what people have realized now, and what we actually know from these documents that came out now, is that not only was Jeffrey Epstein tied to Mossad, but there was court documents stating blatantly that this was a blackmail scheme to get Hollywood elites, to get powerful politicians, to get people within the highest levels of science and education to go and partake in these horrific activities, and then to have the video evidence of them doing so that it could be used against them at will by foreign entities. Now, whether it's just the Mossad, which is what I believe, or whether it goes further than that, which it very well may, because now we know that the CIA allegedly found all of these videotapes, and then they all went mysteriously missing. All of the videotapes that they found, all the blackmail evidence, all of the VHS tapes of these horrific acts happening by these famous elite individuals suddenly went missing. How weird is that? After it had been raided by the CIA, I believe. So this is much deeper than just some guy with lots of money feeding elites what they're looking for. This is a high-level intelligence agency act by a foreign entity, being the Mossad of Israel. The same Israel. Now, this is what should infuriate you more than almost anything about the Epstein situation, is that you are funding what happened on Epstein Island. Did you know that? You are funding what happened on Jeffrey Epstein's island? Because the individuals who were behind Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Maxwell's father, was the Mossad, the intelligence community behind Israel. And the Mossad had all of this blackmail done on all of the most powerful people in the world so that they could control your reality. From the movies that you watch, to the universities that you go to the scientific journals that you probably don't read, to the politicians who make the decisions on whether or not where our tax dollars go, the laws that are passed, who is allowed to walk free through presidential, signatures. All of that is being decided through blackmail, through these honeypot schemes. And the honeypot scheme is basically where you send somebody who's extremely attractive to somebody who's in a position of power, and then you blackmail them by finding some video, photo, text message evidence of them doing something that they shouldn't be doing. It's a well-known tactic. And it was executed perfectly by an organization that you are funding. We are currently sending tax dollars to Israel. Israel's intelligence agency is the Mossad. So you're telling me that our tax dollars were going to fund the very organization that was conducting these types of blackmail on elites on Jeffrey Epstein's island? Yes, that is what I'm telling you. And if that doesn't disgust you, you should get your head checked. So that's a weird realization to me, right? However, let's move on here because there's some big names that we can discuss surrounding this. And I could go on and on and on about this honeypot scheme. But I believe that's exactly what happened. I'm still not convinced, I should say. I'm still not convinced that Jeffrey Epstein's dead. I'm not. You can't convince me of that because there's no evidence. Just the same way that they brought in, if you go back to the JFK files, when JFK died, they brought in their own autopsy officials. They kicked everybody else out of the room. They brought on their own autopsy officials and had their own private autopsy done with nobody around. And it was funded by the very same organization who's allegedly the ones who conducted the assassination. Now, would you imagine that in a situation where Jeffrey Epstein was in cahoots with these intelligence organizations, that those very organizations were able to sneak him out the back door and put a body in a room and then sneak in an autopsy official to write the death certificate and say that it was Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, and by the way, it was also a suicide. Oh, and by the way, these cameras that are literally everywhere in this jail just weren't working. Oh, and by the way, the security footage and the security guards that were supposed to be on duty at the time fell asleep. And they didn't even sign the documents that they were supposed to sign at the time that they were supposed to be there. That's interesting. Very interesting. So, I'm not convinced that he's dead. There's been footage that has circulated about somebody who looked like him, but it looked like it was filmed on a potato. So I don't believe that may have, could have not been him. I believe it was actually footage from the island that was released more recently. So let's look at some of these names that came up here. Now that you understand a little bit of the background of what this was and why nobody's being prosecuted. Well, nobody's being prosecuted because it was probably, at the very least, ingenuously to say the word entrapment, because these people, you could never get anybody that I know to do these types of things. You can never get me to do these types of things. So I don't think entrapment is the right word. But I think that they're afraid that if they would actually go after anybody that was on Epstein's list, if they went after anybody that was on Epstein's list, it would come full circle back around that the ones actually behind Epstein were the very intelligence agencies that our tax dollars are going to fund, whether it be the CIA or the Mossad. That's all I'm saying. All right, so here are the top 5 individuals, not the top 5, but the top 5 most powerful individuals that were on the most recent Epstein documents, starting with number 5, Alan Dershowitz. A constitutional law professor at Harvard Law School and one-time impeachment lawyer for former President Donald Trump, Alan Dershowitz is well known in media circles, but his name also appears repeatedly in now unsealed documents linked to the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. According to a 2014 court filing in the U.S. District Court, Southern District of Florida, Epstein instructed Jane Doe No. 3 to have sexual relations with Dershowitz on numerous occasions while she was a minor, not only in Florida, but also on private planes in New York, New Mexico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. In addition to being a participant in the abuse of Jane Doe No. 3 and other minors, let me share this with you if you're on YouTube with me so you can actually see what I'm looking at here. This article comes from the Christian Post. All right. Tuesday, January 4th. So it says that in addition to being a participant in the abuse of Jane Doe and other minors, Dershowitz was an eyewitness to other sexual abuse of many other minors by Epstein and several Epstein co-conspirators, the court filing alleges. The filing also claims Dershowitz helped negotiate an agreement that provided immunity from federal prosecution in the Southern District of Florida, not only to Epstein, but also any potential co-conspirators of Epstein, including himself. Now, this is one of the most egregious things about this ever about Epstein, is that Alan Dershowitz, the lawyer, and if we go back, the former lawyer of the impeachment lawyer for President Donald Trump was involved in getting immunity for every one of the co-conspirators in the state of Florida and properly executed this. And they tried to hide the evidence of this deal completely. They tried to make sure that nobody knew that Epstein's co-conspirators would be getting off under the guidance of Alan Dershowitz. So thus, Dershowitz helped negotiate an agreement with a provision that provided protection for himself against criminal prosecution in Florida for sexually abusing Jane Doe number 3. Now, this wasn't outright said within the time because he just said any of his co-conspirators was what he negotiated this agreement. But he was included in that. Little did they know, which seems like a conflict of interest. Dershowitz, in a YouTube live stream following the release of the Epstein files, acknowledged flying on the Lolita Express and his presence on the Epstein list. Of course I'm on that list. I was his lawyer. I flew on his plane, said Dershowitz. I had an innocent relationship with a man who I didn't know. Nobody suspected had done anything wrong. Yeah. Okay, Dershowitz. All right. Number 4. As this list pulls up here. Number 4 is going to be none other than dun, 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 dun. Come on, load the Christian Post. Wow, that's brutal. You'd think I would internet from a third world country. Bill Richardson. So number 4 on this list is Bill Richardson. Former U.S. Congressman, Ambassador, Secretary of Energy, and New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson is among the names referenced in the newly listed documents to Epstein. In a deposition taken May 3rd, 2016, Epstein's accuser, Virginia Garuff, claimed that she was instructed by Epstein associate and sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell to give a massage to Richardson during a trip to Epstein Ranch in New Mexico. When asked whether she met Richardson, Garuff said, "I want to say that he was supposed to come over for dinner when we were in New Mexico. I don't know if I met him. I believe that he and Ghislaine had dinner separate from myself." Garuff also said that Maxwell personally instructed her to give massage to Bill Richardson. Richardson, the chair of the 2004 Democratic National Convention, was also nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2019 for his work in North Korea's nuclear crisis. He died in September of 2023. In August 2019, Bloomberg reported Richardson denied ever meeting Garuff, called the allegations completely false. Wow, he died in 2003. How could you ever imagine somebody randomly dying that was a part of Epstein's situation? Huh. How weird is that? Now, I don't know much about Bill Richardson, but I do know that they said he was the chair of the Democratic National Committee. That seems fitting. Now, another thing that people have talked about, and I believe the name's on this list here, so instead of waiting, I'll just tell you. Some of the most notable things that people would see in the headlines when you saw Jeffrey Epstein's list here is Donald Trump and Bill Clinton. And if you watched MSNBC, you would have noticed that Donald Trump's name was actually listed 8 times, alongside the January 6th insurrection, 3 times within the MSNBC coverage of the Jeffrey Epstein documents. Now, the other person's name that I listed was Bill Clinton, which is another one of the 2 individuals that's listed on this list here. So let's talk about those 2 individuals while everything else is pulling up here. But one thing that I'd say about the difference between the way that Trump is portrayed within these documents and the difference between the way that Bill Clinton is portrayed in these documents, and this will just tell you everything that you need to know about MSNBC and their reporting, is that when they reported Donald Trump's name 8 times and Bill Clinton's name 0 times, what they failed to mention was the fact that Donald Trump was essentially exonerated from all wrongdoing within these documents. Now, that's not to say that there won't be more documentation that comes out. That's not to say that Donald Trump is completely innocent, because we don't know that. But that is to say that as far as the evidence is concerned today regarding Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump has done no wrongdoing, according to the individuals that have been interviewed at this time. So that's the first thing that they failed to mention, was the fact that every mention of Donald Trump's name within the Jeffrey Epstein documents stated that no, he never participated in any of these underage activities. Now, again, I still think there's some element of guilty by association that should be applied here. I'm just highly skeptical of anybody who was around Jeffrey Epstein at any time and immediately calling them innocent. I still think that there's a lot to be that will come out. especially if you listen to Megyn Kelly. I still think that there's going to be a fair amount of more trials that go on as a result of this. But I do think that when you look at the evidence so far, it shows that Donald Trump did no wrongdoing here. And it shows that Bill Clinton, word for word, Bill Clinton, within the documents of Jeffrey Epstein's released documents recently, states that Bill Clinton, according to the individual that was interviewed, likes his girls young. That was the word for word conversation that was had from the legal documents under oath. Somebody said, not only does he participate with people who are under 18, illegal pedophilia, but also he likes them young, which to me in the context of this situation tells you that he likes them even younger than 18. Younger, right? Now we also know, well, and we'll get to that in a second, but that to me is the most egregious thing that we saw when it came to the reporting of this, is Donald Trump's name was plastered everywhere about this. Bill Clinton's name was alongside it. Bill Clinton, 2 former presidents on Jeffrey Epstein's list of perpetrators. Well, no. 1 former president and one vice president would be accurate to say, because Donald Trump was not in any way, shape, or form shown to have committed any wrongdoing. And I'll be the first person to call him out when there's evidence to show otherwise. I've posted pictures about him in the past next to Jeffrey Epstein. I'm completely transparent. I have no skin in the game. I will absolutely 100% be the first person to call out Donald Trump when we see evidence that he was a part of this. Because we've seen so far, there is very clear evidence. I believe Bill Clinton's name was mentioned 157 times throughout the documents, specifically saying, in one instance, that he likes his girls young. Ew. Now, let's go to the third most powerful person, because now we know who number 2 and number 1 are, so I'm sorry for going back and forth on you. But one that surprised me a little bit that I didn't see, at least I didn't dive into enough, and I haven't seen evidence of before, so let's read about this now, says climate alarmist and former Vice President Al Gore is mentioned in nearly 1,000 pages of court filings and other documents linked to Epstein. While Gore was not identified as one of the Epstein's alleged clients, the former vice president was named in May 2016 deposition by alleged Epstein victim Johanna Schoenberg, who denied ever meeting Gore or seeing him or his wife, Tipper Gore, on Epstein's private island in Little St. James. In a separate filing on April 2016, Gore was named as a part of a list of documents requested by attorneys for Maxwell in a civil defamation lawsuit. The filing concludes an objection from lawyers from Epstein's accuser, Gruff, in response to a request by Maxwell's attorneys to turn over all photographs or video containing any image of you and Gore, along with several other individuals, including Clinton, Prince Andrew, and Stephen Hawking. In the court filings, Gore is not accused of any wrongdoing or illegal activity. Okay, so again, why are we talking about these people, right? This is what you have to be careful with these documents, is that we can't just immediately say that they're guilty and they're this type of person, right? Because I hadn't read this yet, and I didn't know. Al Gore was not accused of any wrongdoing. Now, again, there is some essence, just for Trump as there is here for Al Gore, of guilty by association to me. I don't believe that I've been friends with any high-level blackmailing pedophiles before. I've never flown to any suspicious islands with children's toys where they shouldn't be. And I've never been in a situation where my name was listed in Jeffrey Epstein's documents. So it's a little hazy. But let's go ahead and let's just see where this takes us. With Bill Clinton's name, as that loads, let's go back to our next document. All right, so I'll take you through some of the actual documents that were discussed here and the word-for-word conversations that were had surrounding some of these individuals. All right, so again, I think that you have to be careful when you're looking at these because some of the names on these lists were individuals who were not being accused of anything specific. But let's look at the actual documentation here. And this is from a Substack article that lists some other individuals as well. Oh, and by the way, another really famous individual that was on Jeffrey Epstein's documentation and list here was the former prime minister of Israel. So you mean to tell me the very association that Ghislaine Maxwell's father worked for, the Mossad, and the person that they worked for there, the Prime Minister of Israel, went and visited Jeffrey Epstein at his New York townhome? That's weird. And when he did it, he covered his face with a scarf even. There's pictures out there of him covering his face with a scarf. All right, so let's go through some of this documentation here from the list. And one of the names that shocked me the most, but we'll get to him in just a minute. But you can walk around. You can actually walk through these documents with me if you're on YouTube. Again, go to YouTube, type in the Adams Archive, and you can subscribe there. All right, so here we go. This portion, the top portion, is going to be around Prince Andrew. So it says new details on the allegations against Prince Andrew have not also surfaced. And I'm just not going to be saying names of victims from here on out. That was silly to begin with. Also testified that she met Prince Andrew and Virginia Karoff when she was 17 years old in New York City, along with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Here is her testimony. And do you recall who, if anyone, was at Jeffrey Epstein's home when you arrived? Yes, when I first walked in the door, it was myself, Ghislaine, headed for the staircase and told me to come up to the living room. And what happened at that point when you came up to the living room? I came up and saw Virginia, Jeffrey, Prince Andrew, Ghislaine in the room. And did you meet Prince Andrew at the time? Yes. At Epstein's New York home was a Prince Andrew puppet, apparently from a BBC production. Weird. Maxwell brought it down for Prince Andrew, and either Maxwell or Epstein took a scandalous photo of Prince Andrew with the girls. They put the puppet on Virginia's lap, and I sat on Andrew's lap. And they put the puppet's hand on Virginia's breast. And Andrew put his hand on my breast, and they took a photo. The more disturbing allegations against Prince Andrew came directly from Karoff. Please name a person that Ghislaine Maxwell directed you to go have sex with. And she said, Prince Andrew. Now, the only reason I'm saying Karoff's name is because that's been the most high-profile victim of some of this. And she's come out and obviously been the forerunner in the victims to actually go after these people, and is very, very open and public about it. Glenn Dubin is another one. So it says, Karoff also alleged that she was directed to have sex with Epstein's friend and billionaire and then hedge fund manager, Glenn Dubin. And here's the transcript. Okay, well, I need you to say the time when Maxwell directed you to go have sex with another person. So can you please tell me to whom Ghislaine Maxwell asked you to go have sex with another person? Mr. Edwards, the lawyer, said, object to the form. And then she said, A. Glenn Dubin. Dubin's ties to Epstein had been previously reported back in 2009 after Epstein was given his sweetheart plea deal from the Department of Justice. The Dubins hosted Epstein for Thanksgiving dinner. Wow. That must be quite the Thanksgiving dinner. Now, one of the bigger names that we'll see here that came up to me that was the most surprising, who's surprised by hedge fund managers and all that stuff. Well, let's take it in stride. It says, Thanksgiving dinner, telling his probation officer they were 100% comfortable with his being around their teenage daughter. Ew. Another one was Tom Pritzker. Tom Pritzker is a billionaire businessman serving an executive chair for Hyatt Hotels and a chairman and CEO of the Pritzker Organization. He's also a member of the Aspen Institute. Karoff alleged she slept with him once. Now, if we go into the conversation here, it says, if I were to ask you the question, how many times did you have sex with Tom Pritzker? Do you know what that question means? She said, I believe so. All right. And what is the answer? I believe I was with Tom once. Next one is David Copperfield. Magician David Copperfield also emerged in the latest Epstein release. While there are no sex-related allegations against Copperfield at this time, it's clear the witness testimony that he was friends with Epstein and had at least some knowledge of what was going on in Epstein's home. Perhaps he had been informed by Epstein or Maxwell that they were a recruiting process where girls were paid to find other girls, according to Johanna, the victim. Have you ever met David Copperfield? Yes. And do you recall when you initially met him? Yes. Can you tell me what that was about? Sure. Someone called me from the house and said that he would be there, and if I wanted to come have dinner, then I could meet him. And what happened at the dinner, if anything? He did some magic tricks. Did you observe David Copperfield to be a friend of Jeffrey Epstein's? Yes. Did Copperfield ever discuss Jeffrey's involvement with young girls with you? He questions me if I was aware that girls were getting paid to find other girls. Did he tell you any of the specifics of that? And no. And the biggest reveal for me from all of the Epstein documents that I hadn't seen before, that it had no really backing until this more recent release, is Michael Jackson's name came up in the Epstein documents. That's right, Michael Jackson. Now, again, I don't think this should surprise very many people when you get into the highest levels of Hollywood elites and Hollywood elite pedophiles. He's probably one of the first names that comes up. But even Michael Jackson, the king of pop himself, was friendly with Epstein. He was at Epstein's Palm Beach mansion at least once, as explained by the victim. Did you ever meet anybody famous when you were with Epstein? She said, I met Michael Jackson. Oh, really? And where was that? At his house in Palm Beach, at Jeffrey's house in Palm Beach. Did you massage him? She said, I did not. She would also testify that Epstein would speak on the phone with with other celebrities, including Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Blanchett. Here's the transcript. It said, I saw one press report that you said you met Kate Blanchett or Leonardo DiCaprio. I did not meet them. No, when I spoke about them, it was when I was massaging him and he would get off. He would be on the phone a lot of the time. And one time he said, oh, that was Leonardo, or that was Kate Blanchett, or Bruce Willis, that kind of thing. So just name dropping. Yes. Okay. Here's the closing thoughts from this article. It says many of the documents that were released today were previously released in the course of Gruff versus Maxwell's litigation, albeit in a more redacted form. For example, one document from today's allegations that Ghislaine Maxwell took the passport of a 15-year-old girl. We reported on that document back in 2022, it said. Also, as we discussed on December 19th of 2023, not all the Jane Does are alleged to have committed wrongdoing. Or John Does, sorry. Today's documents included John Does who were doctors to the victims, friends of the victims, and family members of the victims. It's been unfortunate and rather sad to see the media and various morons with large platforms on social media, the list is long and distinguished, to lump those innocent people with the predatory John Does, as if all the names to be released were part of Epstein's list. If there is a positive to all of that, we guess it's that you can really tell who doesn't do the reading. Anyways, then this is what I preempted that 90-person list with, right? Is like, you can't just go look at these names and say every single one of them was one of the perpetrators. No, you have to dig deeper than that. Anyways, the list of unknown John Does as opposed to the known John Does, such as Sarah Kellen, who are alleged to have committed abuse, is rather small. Today's release doesn't include all the perpetrator John Does. There are more names set to be released in the coming days. This includes John Doe 113, a purported Epstein affiliate and witness who is alleged to have engaged in serious wrongdoing, and will be here to report the developments. All right, so there you have it. Now, let's go back to the victim, or I'm sorry, not the victim, but one of the most interesting cases that has come up, the probably biggest, most made fun of individual from all of this, and rightfully, right? If you're on this list and a part of this, obviously, you deserve to be ridiculed endlessly for the rest of your life. But Stephen Hawking was on Jeffrey Epstein's list released. You say Stephen Hawking? Isn't that guy a quadriplegic? Yes, he is. I have questions, and I'm sure so do you. But his name was on the list, and by far, the best joke that I've seen on this so far is what I had mentioned earlier that I just ran into when I was looking at all of this. And it said, Stephen Trump. Did you hear about Stephen Hawking being on Jeffrey Epstein's list? Yes, I did. He was tried, convicted, and sentenced. He got the chair. Funny stuff. All right, so Stephen Hawking was on the list. Now, this is probably, again, like I said, the most hilarious of them all, and not really hilarious. None of it's funny, obviously, but the most crazy, wild is probably more accurate. Stephen Hawking was now the center of every internet meme of all time now, because he was found within the documents saying that he loved being one of the victims, I guess, said that he loved being a part of underage orgies. And this comes from NDTV. It says the latest finding comes as a part of a large trove of documents released due to a lawsuit filed by Virginia Garuff. Okay, we all know all of that. Jeffrey Epstein once proposed a reward to disprove an alleged accusation involving renowned physicist Stephen Hawking, a report said. The latest finding comes as a large trove of documents released due to a lawsuit filed by Virginia Garuff, an Epstein accuser, against Ghislaine Maxwell, an accomplice to Epstein. In 2015 email, Epstein reportedly suggested to Maxwell that she could issue a reward to anyone who could disprove Garuff's allegations. Specifically, Epstein mentioned a purported claim that Hawking had participated in an orgy on Epstein's private island in the Virgin Islands. It's important to note that there are no specific allegations directly from Garuff regarding Hawking, and that Hawking has never been charged with any sexual misconduct. Hawking did visit Epstein's private Caribbean island as a part of a science conference trip, of course, to St. Thomas in March 2006, shortly before Epstein faced his first charges. Photos from the event show Hawking participating in activities on Epstein Island. However, the newly revealed email did not contain any evidence to substantiate the claim against Hawking. The same email also referred to a separate allegation involving President Bill Clinton, who Epstein said was falsely accused, of course, right? So basically what was happening in this situation is that Jeffrey Epstein was probably had Stephen Hawking or his crew reach out to him and go, hey, we need you to find somebody who, in case something happens or this information comes out, is a friend of the individuals that were around this area that are making these claims, that would then say that he was not there and he didn't participate and none of this is true. So he was just saying, I'll pay you, or I will reward the individual, probably in the amount of millions of dollars, to potentially lie and say that he wasn't a part of this. Which to me tells me, again, most of what you need to know. It says Virginia Garuff was also accused Epstein trafficker and forcing her to have sex with Prince Andrew, King Charles III's younger brother, on 3 occasions when she was 17. In a 2022 statement following an out-of-court settlement with Garuff, Prince Andrew's lawyer stated his intention to make a substantial donation to Garuff's charity to support of victims' rights. Yeah, okay. Now, another part of this is, did you know that The Simpsons actually predicted Stephen Hawking being a pedophile? In the video, I saw the video of this, is he's basically in a gazebo in his wheelchair, and he goes to leave and picks up, what is it? Not Marge's daughter. I forget how can I not know that, right? Come on. Let's see if it's on here. But anyways, Maggie, right? Is it Maggie? Yeah, I think it's Maggie. Or is Maggie the younger one? Nah. Bart, Homer, Maggie. Yeah, who cares? I'm sure you're shaking and your fist at me right now. But anyways, I gotta keep a lot of other stuff in here. And I haven't watched The Simpsons in probably 15 years. So to be fair. But allegedly, this was another Simpson conspiracy win here, was Stephen Hawking picking up one of the Simpsons' children and taking them on a little flight with him after he had left. This little scene on The Simpsons. So let's see if we can get any of the comments here from the comments section. But pretty wild stuff. Yeah, just the similarity, the correlation to the events is a little uncanny, to say the least. Side note, I do find it funny. I did a video the other day about Madison Cawthorn. If you haven't gone and watched the Dave Chappelle comedy special that he just had released on Netflix, he actually does a joke about Madison Cawthorn. And I've had some short conversations with Madison Cawthorn before through social media. And he actually made a joke about Madison Cawthorn, and it was pretty good. It got a little dark for a second, but it was a funny joke. And Madison Cawthorn took it in stride and actually went to the show of Dave Chappelle and to see Dave Chappelle making fun of him, which I think is just the all-time best move that you could do in that situation. Is the last thing you should do when somebody makes fun of you or your background, your shortcomings, is try to cancel them like the left has constantly tried to do, right? You see people from the left, you know, always trying to, you know, there's the big walkout because of him and all this other crazy stuff. So it just seems like the wrong way to go about that. And Madison Cawthorn actually drove out to the place where it was closest to him that he could go and have a actual full show of Dave Chappelle, so he could be made fun of directly by Dave Chappelle, which I just love. And it was uncanny because Dave Chappelle was making fun of, like, why are you inviting he said quadriplegic to an orgy? Like, what is he going to do? Just wheel around and look? And you basically just invited a snitch to come in there and snitch on everybody, and he can't even participate. And, you know, it's way funnier than me. So go watch it, and it was hilarious. But the fact that the timing of that coming out at the same exact time that we find out that Stephen Hawking was included in these Epstein orgies is like just pretty weird.